In our continuing series on audio terms, or an audio glossary, if you will, I'm going to cover two very, very common terms that you will hear all the time, whether it's audiophiles or audio people talking about their systems or reviewers. The two are intertwined between one another, and they're also often confused. So they're mixed up. And those two terms that I'm going to cover today are soundstage and imaging. Now, a lot of people are misguided in thinking that soundstage and image are, just versions of the same thing. They're related to each other, certainly, but they are not the same. So let's describe what they are first. So soundstage, as the stage name may suggest to you, describes the space or the volume that is perceived when you're listening to your system. So soundstage, we often talk about things like soundstage width, soundstage depth, how big the area, the virtual audible area is of, a recording or your system or, the way your speakers are set up will produce a soundstage. And you'll often hear the soundstage extended past the walls of my listening room or past the back wall of my listening room because it had such a great soundstage. So the stage is the size or the volume or the perspective of the sound, the performance, the recording that you're listening to. Image is the actual individual elements, whether that's a musical instrument, whether that's vocals, whether it's a single voice or multiple voices, and those images are the individual items, the individual parts of the music. Again, instruments, things, and can also be, let's remember, it can be electronic as well. Can image. They can be different sounds coming from different places. And so an image is the actual virtual audible reproduction of that instrument or that voice. You should be able to, with a good recording on a good system, you should be able to close your eyes and virtually tell the size, the perspective of that instrument or that singing voice. We'll often hear in reviews reviewers say, these speakers image like crazy. In my case, I would think that would mean that they are, the images, those individual musical components are all very, very easy to discern and very well focused. Why the two are, image and soundstage are related to one another is that the images appear in spaces within the soundstage. So if you think about going to a concert, hearing live music, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, a small platform in a bar, with a small, a rock band playing, 4 musicians, let's say, or it's a full symphony orchestra with, 60 or 80 players in a massive concert hall. Those people, those performers will all appear somewhere in that soundstage. And if you haven't done it before, next time you're out at a musical concert, you may feel silly, but you could tell someone if they ask, you're just getting lost in the music. Close your eyes for a little bit. If you've never done it, it's amazing. It's also amazing because a lot of what you hear in reviews and what a lot of people expect is imaging. They call it image focus. To be able to, pinpoint, one violin in the first violin section of a full symphony orchestra. In reality, in a good concert hall, if you close your eyes, even with the best seat in the house, I guarantee you're not going to be able to make that sort of pinpoint definition of each violin and each instrument unless the performer has flubbed a note. What we're looking for in terms of soundstage and imaging is something that's realistic. We don't want a soundstage that's overblown. If you're listening to an intimate, recording where it's, let's say it's a vocalist playing acoustic guitar and the recording has been mic'd very closely in a small acoustic space, we don't want them to sound like they're, in a cavern. We don't want that soundstage to sound like they're sitting, 50 feet back from you when it should be an intimate performance. In the same way, as I mentioned before, images should be realistically sized. A grand piano should sound the size of a grand piano. A vocalist should sound the size of basically a human being. If what you hear is a wash of sound that goes all across from the left side to the right side of your room, and there's, the vocalist sounds like they're 20 feet wide, there's a problem either with your system or your setup, and it's something to look at. So I hope that nails down a little bit about those terms and how they're interrelated. So we want a naturally sized image with natural image focus and placement of those images within a naturally sized soundstage for the recording or the venue. And I will point out, it's difficult to know in many cases because with all the manipulations that can be done at the recording stage and the mastering stage, there are sometimes effects that can be added that will now make these sounds not natural. So when you're trying to dial in your system or you're listening to a new component, I always recommend try some acoustic recordings first, some that are, well known to be well recorded or well regarded. If your setup is such that you can go from, a small group recording in a studio and have it sound natural and everything sized and imaging correctly, and then put on a well-recorded, piece of classical music that's been recorded, it's a symphony in a nice concert hall, and it now sounds like it has the soundstage size and definition that you'd expect from being at a live symphony concert, then you know that the system's going to do great with everything else. I'll also point out that, with electronic music and things, you can manipulate and place images wherever you want in the soundstage or the sound field. Those are equally beneficial to determine, how good your system is at imaging and sound staging. But again, I always recommend start with a natural recording first because it's the best baseline for determining your setup and how your system is performing. So I hope that helps out. Please keep those comments coming, recommendations for terms that you'd like to hear discussed. And I thank you as always for watching.